Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Emma and I'm a registered associate nutritionist. You may know me from my Instagram, my blog, which is @essentiallyemma, but I've decided to start a YouTube channel. I really want to share a few more lifestyle things with you guys, so I decided to create this channel to share that sort of content. So I'm going to be sharing simple, nutritious, sustainable living tips to help you lead a healthy lifestyle. So the first thing I want to share with you guys is how to make these DIY beeswax food wraps. I'm really trying to cut down on my plastic consumption in 2019, and I know that's a goal that a lot of people have this year. It's been a bit of a hot topic at the minute, so I've been looking for ways to reduce my plastic consumption in my kitchen because I think that's where I use the most plastic. So I looked at buying some of these food wraps, but they're actually pretty expensive for a pack of 3, and I managed to buy all the things I needed to make for these and make about 20 for the same cost. So it's a much more cost-effective way to do it, and it's a super fun DIY project to do, and it's actually not that difficult. Okay, so let's get started. So first things first, let's go through what you're going to need for this. So obviously you're going to want some fabric, and I picked out these lovely bright organic cotton prints here. I've got a yellow one, a blue one, and then a super funky bold one. And you're going to want to have them cut into whatever size squares you want. You can do circles as well if you've got like a specific dish that you want to put one round, but I just went for 4 different size squares. And one tip is you're going to want to, if you've got them, cut your squares using pinking shears, and what this means is the fabric is much less likely to fray, and also it just looks a lot nicer as well because you've got those nice edges on it. So again, I'll leave a link down in the description box for the ones I use and also the fabric I picked out, and also the different size squares that I've cut. But I think I've gone for a 7-inch square, a 9-inch square, an 11-inch square, and a 14-inch square. So yeah, that's the fabric you're going to need. And then for the ingredients, you are going to want some beeswax. Now I would recommend, if you can, finding white beeswax, and that's because if you put the yellow beeswax on your fabric, it can give it a bit of a yellow tinge, which when you've picked out those lovely fabrics, you don't really want that. So I found some white beeswax pellets, and the pellets are really easy because you can just sprinkle them on. But if you can only find a block as well, that's okay, you can grate it. So that's the beeswax. Then this is kind of a key ingredient which can be a bit tricky to find, and that's pine resin, and this gives it that tackiness that allows them to stick. So you can make them with just the beeswax, but you'll find that you aren't able to get them to stick to themselves. So the pine resin is really important for that. You ideally want powdered pine resin. I could only find the whole chunks, but it was actually super easy to crush up. So again, I'll leave a link to that below. And then you're going to want either some coconut oil or some jojoba oil, and this just helps the wraps have a bit of pliability to them. So I've just got a bit of coconut oil left in this tub that I'm going to use up, and we're going to want that melted. We're also going to want an iron, and that is because we're going to iron the fabric with the toppings between 2 sheets of baking paper. So you're also going to want some baking paper, and then either an old towel, or if you've got like a silicone mat to lie down on your surface. You can do this on your ironing board, but I was worried about it coating my ironing board with beeswax, so I think it's a lot easier to do it on a counter. And then you're also going to want an oven. Now there's 2 ways you can do the beeswax wrap. There's the iron method or there's the oven method, and I've actually found a combination of the 2 works the best to give you that really nice smooth coating of the beeswax. Okay, so I've got my iron heated to around the medium setting, and then I've got my oven on a super low heat, and that's because we just want to melt it slightly, not burn it. So my oven's on at around 100 degrees Celsius, which is around 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I've got a silicone mat to protect my worktop. Again, you could use an old towel if you don't have something like this. And then you need 2 sheets of parchment paper and your baking tray, and also everything else ready to go, so you're not kind of faffing around. So you're going to want to take one of your bits of fabric, and you might want to have pre-ironed it a bit if they're really crinkly, and you're just going to lay it down, and it's going to go under this, so just on top of 1 sheet of the paper. And then what you're going to do is take your beeswax pellets and kind of just do a sprinkling all over. There's no real rhyme or reason to this, you just want to make sure that you've got kind of an even disbursement across your fabric, especially around the edges and the corners, because those are the kind of bits that is hardest to reach. And don't worry if you don't get it perfect the first time, you can just peel the parchment paper back and put more on if you need to. Then I'm going to add the pine resin, and you want to be careful with this to only do a very light sprinkling, and that is because it's quite yellow, so if you put too much in one spot, you will notice you'll get a yellow spot on your fabric, which we don't want. But at the same time, you need to make sure you've got enough of this so that the wraps are nice and sticky. Then we're going to take the coconut oil, and again, I've melted this and you're just going to kind of want to do some drops all over the fabric. Don't worry about how it looks, you know, completely not spread out, because when you iron this, it will all get spread out and mixed up. If you've got jojoba oil, this is probably going to be a lot easier because you probably have a dropper, but I was just using what I had in the house. Okay, so then we are going to take the other bit of parchment paper and pop it over the top. Then with your iron, you are just going to slowly iron all across until you can see that the fabric is saturated and all the beeswax is melted. Okay, so now I've done that, and if you peel it back, you can kind of have a look at your fabric, and if you can see that a bit looks a bit dry, then what you can do is just sprinkle a bit more beeswax down, pop this back over and give it another iron. However, mine actually looks like I've got most of it covered, so then what I'm going to do is you can remove this bit, and the easiest way is just to then pick this up and transfer it onto your baking tray like that. And then we're just going to pop this in the oven for 5 minutes to help it all melt and get all kind of mixed up, and then we're pretty much done. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes, and hopefully you can see here that everything's nice and spread out and smooth on my wrap. So then, super easy, all you're going to want to do, and they won't be too hot because they've only been in there a couple minutes, is just pick it up like so. It's going to be very wet and sticky, but just kind of flap it around until it cools off a bit, and then hang it on a drying rack to dry. So when you've got your wraps all done, the next thing you probably need to know is how to use them. So they aren't going to work exactly like cling film, unfortunately, because there is no plastic in them, but they basically work by the heat of your hands kind of warming and moulding the beeswax. So when you want to put it over, say, a jar or something, you just need to kind of press with your hands and try and get it to stick to itself and warm up. This is particularly difficult if, like me, you have ice cold hands and it's the middle of winter. But in that case, sometimes what I'll try and do is, if it's a warm dish, like a casserole dish, I'll try and wrap the beeswax around it while it's still a bit warm. Or you could always pop it in the microwave for just like 15 seconds to warm it up. Or sometimes I'll pop them on the side in the sun to warm up a bit before use. But this also means you need to be really careful with heat with them. And that is because if you heat them up too much, the beeswax will melt just like it did when we put them in the oven. So when you are going to wash these, you just want to use some cool water and soap, and just don't get them too hot, and then leave them to hang dry. If after a few months of using them they're looking a little bit shabby, or the beeswax has gone a bit weird looking, you can use that same oven method to kind of redisperse the wax. So just pop them on a baking sheet with some parchment paper, pop them back in the oven for 5 minutes, and they'll be good as new. One last thing to say as well is they're not really designed to be used with things like meat, and that's just because kind of the bacteria could get into these. So they're really best for, you know, folding up kind of chopped up veggies, half an onion sort of thing, or to put over a jar, or kind of over a tub of cooked leftovers, something like that. So if I am putting kind of meat or fish in the freezer, then what I use is silicone food bags, which are fab. They're completely reusable and you can pop them in the dishwasher. So I'll put the link for the ones I use in the description box down below, because they're a really great alternative to disposable plastic bags. But I hope you guys liked this tutorial, and feel free to tag me in your creations on Instagram. It's @essentiallyemma, and please do subscribe to see more content. Bye!